Hi everybody, I'm Mike. I'm one of the admins of the Moon Landing Hoax Facebook group, and I'm making these live videos on Facebook to our group as a little test to see if people like them or not, to answer certain questions and to kind of communicate with the group. The other administrator, Dr. Raza Fahari, will probably be doing some of these live streams himself. We tried to do them together as a group a couple times, me and Rasa together. We had some technical problems connecting. So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to do a couple on my own. He's going to do a couple as well. You can look at Dr. Rasa Fahari as the leader of the group. I'm listed as administrator number 1, but I do consider him the leader of the group because this group actually did start way back in 2015. He started everything. There's been numerous changes to the group over the years. And one of the rules we respect in this group, something that Dr. Rasa Fahari has always enforced here, is we do not allow flat earthers in the group. And why is that? Well, Dr. Rasa, as we call him for short, believes, as do I do, and as all the moderators that we have working for our group believe, that Flat Earth became popular in 2015 as a psychological operation by various governments around the world designed to discredit genuine research into the moon landings being in any way understood as a hoax. Now, we all believe here that the moon landings, particularly Apollo 8, Apollo 10, Apollo 11, 12, 13 as well, 14, 15, 16, and 17 were the missions that were faked by NASA, getting men to the moon. Why particularly? Because those were the only missions to go beyond low Earth orbit. Now, low Earth orbit is about 200 to 400 or so miles above the Earth, probably about, the distance between, say, New York City to Boston, but above in the sky. So we call that low Earth orbit, which is about where the International Space Station rests. The only missions to have flown human beings, keyword is human beings, beyond low Earth orbit has been the prior missions I specified. And the reason for that is the radiation is incredibly deadly, both galactic cosmic rays as well as solar flares, beyond low Earth orbit, because the Earth contains a iron core which projects a magnetic field which traps radiation around the Earth. We call that the Van Allen belts. But beyond that trapped radiation is deadly radiation from the galaxy, various exploding stars around the universe, as well as flares or bursts up, as we might call them, from the sun itself. And because of that, the missions bringing human beings such as Apollo did to the moon, were technically impossible, keyword is, with the technology at the time, because the proper shielding was not technologically, if you will, available during the 1960s and early 70s, so especially 69 through 72 we're referring to, for those particular missions in question. That doesn't mean that it is physically impossible, of course, to go to the moon. Certain technology would have to be developed, which is what's going on right now in the Artemis program. Now, we don't believe the Artemis program will be landing on the moon anytime soon, of course. That remains to be seen. But, we do all agree in this group specifically that the moon landings were a hoax, because it was technically impossible at the time to take the astronauts to the moon with the technology that they had available for a number of reasons, but the primary reason we focus on here is to do with the radiation. Now, flat earthers, they believe that there are no Van Allen belts, that the Earth is flat. And once we get into the conversation of that the Earth is flat, we take away all the discussion of the genuine evidence that the moon missions were faked, because the moon missions were faked. Evidence goes entirely into radiation and space. Once we move and say, oh no, the missions were faked because the Earth is flat, we take off of the table all of the evidence that we would be using to prove that Apollo was fake to begin with, which is why we believe that various vested government interests who have a strong need, if you will, to ensure the population continues, and various populations around the world continue to believe in the Apollo fairy tale, as we might call it here. In order to push that, they infiltrate conspiracy groups. And, I don't really consider us a conspiracy group. We're not necessarily specifying or stating a specific opinion as to how the Apollo missions were faked. We're just saying that we were faked and that we know that they were faked. We're not going into specifically an opinion from the group that we're going to impose on anybody exactly how they did it. Some details are being exposed over the years, and we can speculate in this group about that, and that's kind of fun to do. But we don't exactly know how they did it, and we don't pretend to know exactly how they did it. We know some details that have been released in this group, and we do talk about that, but we don't pretend to be the ultimate authority as to exactly how it was done. And it's not a conspiracy to say you don't believe in something, okay? But flat Earth, of course, is a belief. People say, well, they couldn't have gone to the moon because the Earth is flat. And then it sidetracks the whole discussion into whether or not the Earth is flat and the conspiracy to keep it flat. We just don't believe that here, okay? And we think that the idea that they had was to create this ridiculous, and we strongly believe it's ridiculous, theory that the Earth is flat, in order to take away from the discussion all the evidence which relies on a round Earth, a round moon, and a round sun, and radiation and all this stuff. It's all needed in order to prove, once we make all these assumptions that we have a round Earth, a round moon, and round stars, and a round sun, and we talk about all that, we can put all that to evidence together, look into the photographic and video records, and we can go ahead and prove that Apollo is faked. But these flat earthers, what they like to do is strip away from us and distract from the public discussion all the different evidence that we talk about in this group every single day, in order to sidetrack us and get us talking about whether or not the Earth is flat or round, which is, of course, ridiculous. We have members in our group and moderators and administrators. I'm on one side of the globe in the United States of America. Dr. Rasa Vihari is an expat that lives in China. We have Gerald White that lives in Australia. And me being in the northern hemisphere, I can look at the moon at the same time talking to Jera, and the moon will look upside down relative to each other when we're looking at it. And why is that, right? Because, the Earth is curved, of course, and I'm on one side of the planet, he's on another, and from our different perspectives, it looks upside down. Why is that? Well, the Earth is curved, it's round, okay? And I, being in the northern part of the United States, will frequently travel to Florida, the southern part, and I'll look at the moon while I'm in the north, and I'll go to the south, and I will see the orientation has changed, okay? Now, not with using the internet, just with using logic and your plain eyeballs in front of you. You can, through regular travel, determine and discern the shape of the Earth, okay? And that's how we know the Earth is round, just by our own sensory experience, of course. But the cool part is, with that information, we can actually prove as well that the Apollo missions were faked. Now, I'm going to share screens with you here if I can. Let me just see if I can find the button. Let's see here. I'm not sure it allows me to do that. Well, you'll have to forgive me. This is my first time testing this live stream. I saw a share button for the screen. I can't find it now, but I'm sure at another test on this, I'll find it and we'll be able to share screens with you. But I'll just verbally explain then, some examples that you can reference with me here, okay? So let's take, for example, Apollo 17. And you can look up on the computer, check the NASA record, and you can go to Apollo 17, photo number A17-136-20744, okay? And you can look at that photo and pull it up, and it's an Apollo 17 astronaut taking a picture on the ground of his shadow. And you see the astronaut shadow going straight ahead, 12 o'clock. Then you see a rock in the upper right-hand corner of the photo you can look at. And again, this is photo, pull it up, AS17-136-20744. The shadow of the rock points this way, from my perspective as he's looking. If you look at the photo, that would be to your left, right? The shadows are perpendicular, okay? Why is that the case, all right? Well, the sun is about 109 times the size of the Earth, okay? It's much, much, much bigger. It's about 90 million miles away. So the sun always casts parallel shadows, okay? So you can't have perpendicular shadows. You can't, in the one same camera frame, you can't have one shadow pointing this way and another shadow pointing that way, okay? That's just not how the sun works. Now, our trolls in the comments from that love to cheerlead for NASA and excuse and apologize for this, why would the lighting be perpendicular? Well, the answer, of course, is that this was shot in a studio, right? You've got either a close proximity large light source, and depending upon the how close that light is placed, of course, the shadows on objects cast will go in different directions. And you can test this out at home. Our trolls like to say, well, there would be double shadows. There would be, two light sources. Well, there could be one light source, and the light source could be hitting the objects at different angles, causing the shadows to be different angles. That's one possibility. And of course, there can also be multiple light sources, right? When you go in your living room, I mean, there aren't your shadows casting different directions because you have lights at different parts of your living room. You don't see double shadows necessarily on every object in your living room, right? But you do see shadows that would be pointing different directions. Well, in this photo, and again, I apologize, I tried to screen share, it didn't seem to work. I'll get it working on future live streams. AS17-136-20744, you look up that photo, you will see the shadows going perpendicular to each other, which is not possible when light casts by the sun. The sun is 90 million miles away. It's so far away that the shadows are always going to be parallel, okay? Factually parallel, actually, when cast from that distance. And the other reason, of course, is the sun is much bigger than the Earth. That is why shadows are parallel. Now, I did mention, trolls that infiltrate our group and like to try and debunk us, of course, and say how we're wrong. And one of the things they will say is that if you look at a pair of train tracks, and they call this perspective, okay, you'll see the train tracks converge toward each other, okay? So you can Google train tracks perspective, and you can see, I'm looking at my screen right now, I wish I could share it with you. You know, two lines, they're converging to a point. We call that perspective. Now, if you were to change your orientation of your view and you were to look at the train tracks directly top down, of course they would become parallel, right? It's only because you're looking toward a horizon line that you see them converge toward each other, right? So let's go back to the photo I was referencing earlier, AS17 136-20744. Well, they're not, the shadows aren't converging toward each other like train tracks are, right? Number one, first of all, the camera is pointed downward to the ground, right? So it's not like we're even seeing the horizon that can be converged toward. The camera's looking right down on the ground when you pull out that photo and pull up that photo and look at it. And number two, the one shadow is going this way, the other shadow is going that way, right? So they're not converging toward each other, right? So, you know, perspective, as they would call it, cannot explain the anomaly in this particular photo. Now, this circles back to why we ban flat earthers here and why we are not a flat earth group. We use common sense as well as the science of the universe as we know it and draw contradictions and all that with the Apollo photographic and video record to prove that what is shown in the Apollo photos, okay, in this case Apollo 17, the last mission purporting to have sent men to the moon, do not comply with the basic laws of physics as we understand them, right? So, and that has to do with the Earth being a round object, the moon being a round object, and the sun being a round object, and the sun being 109 times larger than the Earth. Well, what do flat earthers believe? They believe the sun is some type of object that is smaller than the Earth, right? And, you know, of course, if you believe that, then the whole theory I'm putting forth, which is that as we always observe, the sun casts parallel shadows, of course, well, that wouldn't be true, right? Because the sun is not many times bigger than the Earth if you are a believer in flat Earth theory. So there's many different proofs we have that Apollo was faked, and we use our understanding of the universe and our contradictions that we see in the Apollo record between those contradictions and our understanding of how the universe works to prove that the Apollo record was faked. Now, if you're new to the group, you can do searches in our posts. You know, I'm Mike Myers, one of the admins. You know, I have a website, stratagemsoftheright.blogspot.com, which is linked to in many of the different posts that I make on the page. Maybe not all of them, but what I like to do is make photographic memes of the Apollo photos with an analysis and to show exactly why particular aspects of the Apollo record are fraudulent. And we go through them one by one in the group. We go through the video records, and we have a lot of fun here doing that. But flat earthers really don't bring anything to the discussion. All they do is discredit us because, once you believe the earth is flat, all of the proofs we have that Apollo was a fraud go out the window, and instead we're talking about some ridiculous theory that the earth is flat when of course we know that it isn't. So that's the reason we kick out flat earthers here. I hope you understand, of course. Again, this live stream was a little test. It's completely off the cuff. It's just me chatting, and I've already made one error in that I couldn't figure out how to do the screen sharing, but hopefully I'll be able to do that at future live streams. Anyway, if you like these, drop a comment below stating you enjoy them. If you don't like them, I'll stop them going forward. If you really like them, I'll convince Rasa to do some as well. So you guys have a great day. Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you again at one of these live streams in the future. Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.